Morbid Facts, Part 492. In August of 2008, popular DJ deadmau5 and his tour manager missed their connecting flight in Barcelona by just a few minutes. While waiting in the terminal, pissed off that they would miss their next show, they watched as their flight took off and immediately crashed due to mechanical failure, killing 154 of the 172 passengers on board. deadmau5 said after witnessing the tragedy, quote, "There were maybe 800 to 1,000 people in the airport and nobody made an effing sound. It was the creepiest shit." In Singapore, every person over 21 years old is automatically registered as an organ donor. Those who opt out are placed at the bottom of the priority list if they ever need an organ transplant. In 2010, 72-year-old Linda Chase left her roommate's dead body in the recliner chair that he died in for 18 months. She talked to his decaying corpse and watched NASCAR with him every day. After police performed a welfare check and found the man's body, Linda's only explanation was that she didn't want to be alone and he was the only person who was ever nice to her. She only got in trouble for cashing some of his benefit checks and was sentenced to 3 years probation and mental health treatment. Morbid Facts, Part 494. In March of 1989, Texas college student Mark Kilroy went missing while vacationing for spring break just across the Mexican border. An extensive search took place that quickly turned dark when investigators discovered that Kilroy had been kidnapped by a drug cult that believed human sacrifices would protect their operations from law enforcement. On the cult's ranch, they found 16 bodies, including Kilroy's, that had been sacrificed in occult ceremonies. The student had been tortured, sodomized, and killed with a machete during a sacrificial ritual, after which his brain and spine were removed from his body. The cult's leader evaded capture by taking his own life, but 14 others were prosecuted for their heinous crimes. After George Harrison of the Beatles died from brain and lung cancer in 2001, his widow sued one of the doctors at the hospital where George received his radiation therapy. The man allegedly forced him to listen to his son play guitar and autograph the guitar while George was barely coherent in his final days. In 2020, Costco stopped selling Chowco coconut milk after its manufacturer was accused of using forced monkey labor. Groups of chained-up macaques were allegedly forced to pick coconuts and had their teeth pulled if they tried to resist. Costco halted purchases and demanded audits from the Thailand-based company to ensure humane practices. Morbid Facts, Part 495. In September of 2000, Celtics legend Paul Pierce was stabbed 11 times during a bar fight in Boston. He suffered wounds to his face, neck, and back, but despite nearly dying and undergoing surgery to repair serious damage to his lungs, Pierce was the only Celtics player to play in all 82 games the following season. I don't know what's happening, I'm sorry. Years later, Pierce revealed that he was severely depressed after the stabbing, dealing with constant paranoia over crowds and PTSD from the near-death experience. In 1951, Edward Harrison was playing a round of golf in Washington State when his driver snapped and the shaft pierced his gooch. He staggered in excruciating pain for about 100 yards before collapsing and bleeding out. In 2001, a Canadian man was staying over his mother's house so he could attend his father's funeral. While cleaning the kitchen, he apparently tripped over the open dishwasher door and fell onto the rack of knives that were standing upwards. He was impaled by several knives and eventually succumbed to his wounds. Morbid Facts, Part 496. Last summer, 36-year-old Italian surfer Giuliana Manfrini died in a total freak accident while surfing off the coast of Indonesia. When she was catching a wave, a swordfish suddenly leaped out of the water and stabbed her directly in the chest with its bill. Despite immediate first aid from her surfing buddies and being rushed to a local hospital, she couldn't be saved. Here's the grave of a woman who chose to leave her name off and instead gave it the inscription, "I was somebody." She apparently told the cemetery sexton that eventually nobody would remember her anyway, so this inscription would at least be more memorable than she was. While on an African safari in 1963, Ernest Hemingway survived 2 plane crashes in a row. The first plane collided with a telephone wire and wound up in the Nile, leaving him with minor injuries. While Hemingway was being rescued from this first crash, the rescue plane also crashed. The plane caught on fire, so Ernest had to smash the door open with his head, causing extensive burns and a fractured skull. The novelist was presumed dead until he walked out of the jungle in high spirits, carrying bananas and a bottle of gin. Morbid Facts, Part 497. In 2018, an English woman was drinking out of a glass with a metal straw when she suddenly fell with the drink in her hand. Tragically, she landed directly on the straw, which punctured her eye socket and went through her brain, killing her almost instantly. For 4 decades, Walter Freeman, the man who made lobotomies popular, had personally performed as many as 4,000 lobotomies on patients as young as 12, despite never being professionally trained to perform surgeries. At least 100 of his patients died from cerebral hemorrhaging. For many years, Beethoven kept his hearing loss a secret since he was afraid that revealing his deafness would ruin his career. He once wrote a note to his brother that he never sent, confessing that he'd been completely deaf since the age of 40, and explaining that it had an immense impact on his social life. Since many people assumed he was antisocial, Beethoven longed for human contact but became a recluse out of shame. All of this resulted in severe depression and made the composer contemplate taking his own life. Former U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson reportedly had a massive Johnson that he was very proud of. He was known to frequently display it in public and even nicknamed it Jumbo. Apparently, when LBJ used urinals, if another guy walked into the bathroom, he'd turn around and shake his hog at the guy while saying, "Have you ever seen anything as big as this?" Eadwig, King of England from 955 to 959, allegedly left his coronation feast to have a threesome with his future wife and her mother. He was only 15 years old at the time. In the early 1900s, King Edward VII had a custom-made love chair. The chair allowed the 300-pound man to indulge in his sexual fantasies without crushing his female partners. Author of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, is notoriously said to have lost her virginity on top of her mother's grave, who died just 11 days after giving birth to Mary. She also kept her dead husband's heart and carried it around for more than 30 years until her death in 1851. In the year 2000, pro wrestler Bam Bam Bigelow, who was known for his iconic Flames outfit and head tattoo, received second-degree burns over 40% of his body while rescuing 3 children from a house fire. He spent 10 days recovering in the hospital after saving their lives. In 2017, a 9-foot-long alligator clamped onto the leg of 10-year-old Florida girl Juliana Osa. But luckily, she remembered a life-saving trick she recently learned at Gatorland theme park. She stuck her fingers up the gator's nose and it instantly released her leg and took off. For the first few years of his life, Mason McDeed cried constantly from his issues with cerebral palsy. His parents struggled to find any way to comfort him until one day his dad put on some Metallica. Soon he noticed Mason had immediately stopped crying and fell asleep, which would work every time he played heavy metal music thereafter. Ever since this revelation, Mason has attended over 500 metal concerts with his dad. In 1998, Wu-Tang member Old Dirty Bastard witnessed a car accident from the window of his Brooklyn recording studio. He quickly ran outside and organized onlookers to help lift the car off of a trapped 4-year-old girl. Using a fake name, ODB later visited the girl frequently in the hospital while she recovered from first-degree burns. When the Red Army captured Hitler's bunker in May of 1945, the only person they found alive was the mechanic Johannes Henschel. After everyone else had either fled or taken their own lives, Henschel had stayed behind to keep the field hospital in the building above supplied with water and power. During the Las Vegas shooting, 29-year-old Marine veteran Taylor Winston's military training kicked into action. He quickly stole someone's truck to drive any wounded victims to the hospital. He and his girlfriend made 2 trips as the shooting took place, picking up the most critically injured victims, and his heroic action likely saved over a dozen lives. Here are some morbid facts about Keanu Reeves. Keanu was set up for a bumpy ride from the start, as his drug addict father bailed on his family when Reeves was just 3 years old, leaving his mom to jump from marriage to marriage while giving young Keanu zero sense of stability. Keanu had his first taste of tragedy when his best friend River Phoenix died of a drug overdose in 1993. The two had co-starred in My Private Idaho just 2 years prior and had become very close with one another on and off set. A few years later, when the actor was filming for The Matrix, his daughter was stillborn at 8 months. The tragedy caused he and his girlfriend to briefly break up just before she was killed in a car crash. Since then, he's donated most of his earnings from movies to charities and has avoided having kids. Keanu's sister Kim was diagnosed with the deadly blood cancer leukemia in 1991. In response, he sold his home to move closer to her, cleaned her house, cooked her meals, and prepared all of her necessary medications. Once she recovered, Keanu started a private charity to fund cancer research in children's hospitals. In 2009, he was interviewed saying, "I don't like to attach my name to it. I just let the foundation do what it does." Morbid Facts, Part 488. In 1996, a stalker named Robert Dewey Hoskins told Madonna's assistants that he would slash her throat from ear to ear unless she married him. He then jumped the fence at the singer's home before being shot by a bodyguard, but survived and was arrested. Madonna would later testify against Hoskins in court, saying she felt sick to her stomach just being in the same room with him and had recurring nightmares about him chasing her. After being deemed highly psychotic and extremely violent, Hoskins was sent to a mental hospital which he briefly escaped from in 2012. Just last year, a zookeeper from Uzbekistan was eaten alive while attempting to round up 3 lions that escaped from their enclosure. He apparently recorded the entire ordeal on his phone while attempting to impress his girlfriend, as his deathly screams could clearly be heard in the footage. Rescuers say they had no choice but to tranquilize 2 of the lions, while shooting the 3rd dead before finding the zookeeper's mangled remains. In 2013, a Swedish prisoner escaped from the facility because he had a severe toothache and was denied medical care. He broke out, saw a dentist who pulled out his tooth, and then turned himself back in. Morbid Facts, Part 489. This was the last photo ever taken of Marco Siffredi, the first man to descend Mount Everest on a snowboard. He was attempting his 2nd descent in 2002 when Sherpas urged him not to go due to bad weather conditions, but Siffredi ignored their warnings and was never seen again. In 1999, Little League baseball player Kevin Stephen was hit in the chest by a baseball bat, causing his heart to suddenly stop. Luckily, off-duty nurse Penny Brown was in attendance and saved the boy's life by giving him CPR. 7 years later, Penny Brown was choking at a restaurant when one of the workers rushed over to give her the Heimlich maneuver, thus saving her life. That worker was Kevin Stephen. Jacques Hebert was a revolutionary French journalist during the Reign of Terror, who was heavily in favor of beheading anyone who disagreed with his radical views. After he accused Marie Antoinette of incest with her son, Hebert was sentenced to death via guillotine. He reportedly fainted several times on the way to his execution and screamed hysterically when placed under the blade. To amuse the crowd and make a statement, the executioners rigged the blade to stop inches from Hebert's neck. They did this 3 times before finally executing him on the 4th attempt. Morbid Facts, Part 490. While filming for Gladiator, Oliver Reed died suddenly after challenging a group of sailors to a drinking contest at a bar. The actor consumed 8 pints of beer, 12 shots of rum, several shots of cognac, and an entire bottle of whiskey. He fell ill during the match and collapsed, dying of a heart attack in the ambulance en route to the hospital. It ended up costing the production company $3 million to recreate Reed's face with CGI, so he could appear in all the scenes that still needed to be filmed. Here's a photo taken by Challenger Deep of a beer bottle resting on the ocean floor 35,000 feet down, the deepest known point on the Earth's surface. This is the last known photo taken of Janet Johnson, a famous American mountaineer known for completing many difficult climbs throughout the world. She disappeared along with her friend John Cooper during a climb in 1973, until their bodies were found separately 2 years later, both wearing just one shoe and missing their ice picks. Cooper was found with a bloody wound on his stomach and a look of horror frozen on his face. Accordingly, several people, including examiners of the autopsy, believe that both Cooper and Johnson were murdered. The photo above was only discovered in 2020 when climbers found Janet's backpack and camera within the melting glacier. Morbid Facts, Part 491. Here's a photo of Marine Sergeant Tyler Ziegel and his partner Renee Klein on their wedding day in 2006, before she would end up divorcing him just 1 year later due to his disfigurement. While on tour in Iraq, Ziegel was critically injured in a suicide bombing, losing his left hand, 3 fingers on his right hand, part of his skull, and sight in one eye, while his ears, nose, and lips were completely burnt off. Unable to work, he relied on benefits from the VA, but they paid him much less than expected, so he struggled financially. In 2012, Ziegel tragically died from an overdose on morphine and alcohol at the young age of 30. In 2023, a 17-year-old high school student from Florida died from an allergic reaction to pistachio nuts. She reportedly asked the staff if the baklava being served contained any nuts and was told no, despite baklava always being made with nuts. The girl immediately started showing signs of a severe reaction and was allowed to leave school to pick up some Benadryl from a local pharmacy, but the school never called 911. The teenager soon went into anaphylactic shock, slipped into a coma, and tragically passed away. Her family is now suing the school for $50,000 for their critical negligence. In 2012, a British man bought 5 amateur paintings for a mere $5 at a Las Vegas garage sale. When he decided to reframe one of them, he found a piece of paper behind it that turned out to contain an original sketch by Andy Warhol. His signature was also etched into the back, giving it a value of at least $2 million. In the 1960s, a radio station organized a bonfire to burn a bunch of Beatles records after the band claimed they were more popular than Jesus. The next day, the station's broadcast tower was struck by lightning, damaging their equipment and sending the news director to the hospital. American acrobat Jennifer Bricker was born in 1987 with no legs and was therefore put up for adoption by her parents. From a young age, she always wanted to become a gymnast and completely idolized American Olympian Dominique Moceanu. In a shocking turn of events, when Jennifer turned 16, she discovered that her idol was actually her biological sister. Christopher Lee, the actor who played Saruman in The Lord of the Rings and Count Dooku in Star Wars, was related to Confederate General Robert E. Lee, was a flight lieutenant in the British Royal Air Force and killed multiple Nazis, climbed Mount Vesuvius 3 days before it erupted, tripped over a live bomb and survived, and released a death metal album at the age of 88. During World War II, French weightlifter Charles Rigoleau was jailed after punching a Nazi guard. He then broke out of the cell by bending the bars, allowed other prisoners to escape with him, and then beat the guard who jailed him. Lachman Gurung was a Gurkha soldier during World War II who once threw back 2 enemy grenades from his trench before the third one exploded in his hand. He then single-handedly defended his post for over 4 hours against 200 Japanese enemies, killing 31 soldiers using only his left hand. He ended up surviving and was awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions, the highest and rarest honor in the British Army. Morbid Facts, Part 498. In 2017, a 10-year-old Australian boy named Matthew Mitchell was bitten by the highly venomous funnel web spider. He was rushed to the hospital while experiencing life-threatening symptoms and was given 12 vials of antivenom, the largest dosage ever administered. The boy made a full recovery, and the spider that bit him is now part of the venom milking program that produces the antivenom. Isadora Duncan was one of the most famous dancers of the early 1900s who is often credited with creating modern dance. But after leaving a show in 1927, her trademark long scarf got caught in the wheel axle of her new convertible. Her neck was immediately broken, and she was declared dead on arrival at the hospital. In Buenos Aires in 1988, a poodle suddenly fell from an apartment balcony and landed on the head of a 75-year-old woman, killing her and the dog instantly. Just then, another lady who witnessed the strange incident from the middle of the road continued to stand there in bewilderment, resulting in her being fatally struck by a passing bus. Upon witnessing both events, an elderly man then died of a heart attack out of shock. All of this chaos reportedly happened in less than a minute. In 2003, a woman found a painting in the trash on a New York City curb. She felt it had power, so she took it home without knowing anything about its value or origin. After holding on to it for 4 years, she eventually discovered that it was a very valuable Mexican painting that was stolen in 1987. So she contacted authorities and received a $15,000 reward plus a percentage of its sale price of over $1 million. In August of 2010, a 13-year-old British teenager was struck by lightning at 1313 on Friday the 13th. He was the only one struck amongst a crowd of 150,000 people who were watching an air show. In 2014, a 39-year-old Brazilian woman named Adriana wanted to find her mother who abandoned her as a baby. So she went on a TV show and ended up finding her mom through the power of the internet. The two had an emotional reunion, but her mother revealed that she had also abandoned Adriana's infant brother, Leandro. In a bizarre twist, Adriana's husband turned out to be her brother, Leandro. But despite the pair being siblings, they vowed to never separate.